Hey, welcome back everybody. So in this video I'm going to be explaining how to operate the Bagley sheet metal shear that we have in our shop. If you happen to have a similar sheet metal shear in your shop, then this video will explain some of the basics. That way you can get more familiarized with the equipment and you'll be able to safely operate it with no hiccups. So on this model there's a control box on the right side that you can see there down towards the bottom of the shear, and there's a few switches on there. There are a couple buttons, but the first one that I want to point out is on the very right. So this is a turn knob. So right now it's in the horizontal position. That means that it's off. You want to rotate that clockwise so that way it's lining up vertically, and that's going to give power to the shear. That way you can turn it on. And then on the front of the control box, you'll see a green button, a black knob, and then a red push button. That's your emergency shutoff. The green button is to turn the shear on, and the black knob, the adjustment knob, is to set the shear to the operation that you'd like. So right now I'm going to turn it all the way to the left, which is SIN, or short for single cut. So this means that every single time you press the foot pedal down, the shear is going to make one single cut, and then that shear is going to open back up until you're ready to make your second cut. There's also an emergency shutoff button on the foot pedal. So before you can even turn the machine on, you want to make sure that both emergency shutoff switches are released and pulled out, or they're extended all the way out. They're not pushed in. And I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration here just how easy it is to work the machine. And you can see that it really takes no effort at all. But the material that I was cutting really wasn't measured out. I do have an example for you here. I can show you on this this strip of carbon steel. I have two sections measured at 5 inches in length for each one. And I'm going to show you how to set the measurement for the shear so that way you can get accurate cuts every single time. So in order to adjust the shear for certain lengths and cuts, you have to travel on over to the back side where you're going to see a couple more components that you're going to have to move around in order to set your measurements. And so as we come on over to the back side of the shear, you're going to see a couple arms that extend out from the back of the machine, and you're going to see what appears to be an adjustment wheel. And this is all part of the system that adjusts the length of your cuts. So what happens is once you set your length, when you set your material into the shear, there's also a back plate that stops your material from coming out any further, and this allows you to get accurate cuts based upon whatever measurement that you've set. And as I move the camera to kind of sit on top of one of the arms, I'm going to set the view so that way you can see on this one arm, you can see what looks like a ruler in place. And so this is how we set the lengths of our cut. And you can cut materials in length about a little over 2 feet. And I'm going to get in close so that way you can look at the system of measurement. So with this shear, we're using the imperial system, which is inches and feet. And so just before we get ready to set our measurement, let's go ahead and take a look at what our adjustment wheel is connected to. And you can see that the adjustment wheel connects to a rectangular housing unit that is slipped onto one of the rear arms. And it's important to note here that on the other side of the shear, there's another one of these housing units that is also slipped onto a rear arm. And that way, if you set your measurement on one side, it's going to give you a nice straight edge throughout the length of your cut. But right now, the adjustment wheel is locked in place. So how do we unlock it? Well, there's a handle on the opposite side of the housing unit that rotates and allows you to spin this unit freely and then also lock it in place once you've got your measurement. And so remember back to that piece of material that I'm going to be demonstrating on. Remember that I've got two sections that are measured out at 5 inches each. So I'm going to want to set the shear to cut at the 5-inch mark. And so if you're wondering to yourself, well, how do we know that we've accurately set the shear to 5 inches or any other measurement? Well, if you look at the housing unit, you'll notice that there's an L bracket that's been bolted to it on one side. So if we consider the adjustment wheel to be the front side of the housing unit, the L bracket is going to be on the right side, and this is how we set our measurement. We want the very outside edge of that L bracket to line up with the measurement that we're trying to set. So here I'm going to show you setting the shear to 5 inches, and I'm going to try to finesse it into place. Once we've set the distance for our cut, you can go ahead and lock that housing unit down so that way it doesn't move during your cut. And just for safe measure, go ahead and try to jiggle that adjustment wheel just to make sure that you've locked it down tight enough. And then I'm going to give you a close-up just so you can see that the outer edge of that L bracket hovers just over the 5-inch mark. In fact, you can just barely make out the outline of the number 5. And then you just want to make sure that nothing is going to block the path of the material as you insert it into the shear. And then we can go ahead and head on to the front and cut our materials. So once again, make sure that that on switch is pointing vertically up so that way it's delivering power to the machine. Make sure that both emergency shutoff buttons are not pressed in. And then once you're ready, go ahead and hit the green button so that way you can turn the shear on. Make sure that your black knob is in the SIN position or the single cut position, and then you can go ahead, insert your material until it stops, and once you're ready, go ahead and push down on the foot pedal and the shear is going to make your cut. And once you've cut all the material that you need, you can just walk on over to the back side. Here, our shop staff fabricated us a little push cart so that way we can just reach in there, pull our material out instead of having to pick it up off the floor. If you don't have one of these in your shop, I highly suggest you make one, because if you're having to cut large amounts of material, it really helps to transport it, to wherever you need to get it to in the shop.